Okay, guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Ich wollte ein kleines Video machen, um das Thema Master-Slave-Dialektik anzusprechen. Das ist eine Theorie von Hegel und aus dem 19. Jahrhundert, also passt zu unserem Thema. Und es geht Hegel darum, zu untersuchen, wie entsteht Bewusstsein und Selbstbewusstsein, Self-Consciousness. Und das ist eine Theorie und ich habe das auf Englisch gehabt für einen anderen Kurs und deswegen mache ich das auf Denglisch jetzt. Und so laut Hegel's Theorie, there's an initial encounter between two beings, two self-consciousnesses, two I's. These meet and are shocked to see each other. It's like in the photo da. So what happens? They can either ignore one another and just say, okay, that was weird, keep going, in which case the other is merely another object. So it's, in the theory, it's a matter of how people develop subjectivity. And so the transition, so to say, from object status to subject status. Something Lacan talks about with the mirror stage, that some of you might be familiar with that from the theory seminar. And hence, if they ignore each other, no true self-consciousness develops. On the other side, alternatively, they become mesmerized by the mirror-like other and attempt to assert domination over the other self-consciousness. And so they see, and there's the mirror kind of from Lacan comes up here already. This similarity interests them and they try to dominate that similarity. And so why domination? Well, the truth of the I's existence is shattered by the sight of the other, and its exclusive position as omnipotent, as allmächtig is gone. And this is all really reflected in Lacan. Lacan is also a dialectician. If anybody that doesn't know Lacan is interested in reading about him, just there's his name, Lacan, mirror stage. I'm sure there's something on Wikipedia about that. But the discussion is the transition from the omnipotent, allmächtig position of the child to a position as subject among other subjects. And so we're talking about the transition or the interrelationship of subjecthood and objecthood. So hence the I enters into a struggle with the other for domination. So both the I's want to exist and they want to maintain their subject status, and so they have to try to dominate each other. And so a struggle to the death ensues. This is in that video from A Bug's World that I posted up on the, I think it's A Bug's World or A Bug's Life. I posted up with this one. What happens if one is killed? Can the survivor truly attain self-consciousness? So think about it. The self-consciousness, for it to develop, it has to have recognition from another being. And so if one person is alone, then they would never achieve a sense of self-consciousness like what Hegel's talking about. And here we see this. You can describe this as death, like in Hegel, or you could say it's just disillusionment. It could be omnipotent object, subjectivity, where everything's an object, where you actually have no real relationships. And that's really key, I think, for Venus and Pelz. Does the SM relationship destroy or help them construct a sense of a relationship based on recognition? And that's kind of what Hegel says is the cornerstone of a healthy relationship. So anyway, death and dissolution are avoided by agreement. Das ist interessant in dem Text. Es gibt einen Vertrag zwischen Wanda und Severin. Und wir können auch an Faust und Mephisto denken. Dieses Konzept des Vertrages spielt im 19. Jahrhundert eine sehr große Rolle, besonders mit der Entwicklung der Wirtschaft in der Industrialisierung und der erhöhte Wert sozusagen von Verträge. So anyway, back to our discussion. So the master emerges as master because he or she does not fear death as much as the slave. The slave out of fear consents to slavery, and so there's this notion of consent in the Vertrag, perhaps even in the S&M relationship we're seeing in the text develop or not develop, depending on how you look at it. And so existence of self-consciousness is achieved only if both live. The recognition of the other gives each individual the self-certainty required to exist as an individual, or we could just say there as a subject. However, what we've seen in the text, and we see this in our lives, really in general in relationships, relationships tend to be unstable. In the case of the master-slave dialectic, the recognition by the slave is only by threat of death, and the master's self-consciousness is dependent on the slave for recognition. So the slave can't survive or can't exist further if the slave is truly destroyed, and the slave only achieves a sense of self-consciousness by threat of death. So not really a happy situation. This is eine gute Frage für unseren Text. Like, who is in control? In the relationship between Severin and Wanda, who is in control? Who is in control in any relationship, I guess Hegel would say. And so the dialectic describes the encounter between two self-conscious beings who struggle to the death before one enslaves the other, only to find that this does not give the master the control over the world he or she had hoped. And so, yeah, it was A Bug's Life, so check out that video. I think this is a really cool picture to describe this master-slave relationship, because while it shows one in all capital letters and one in all small letters, they're both in the same parentheses on the same size metal piece, and they're bound together in this ring. And, you know, a ring generally symbolizes connectedness, interdependency, and that's what we're seeing here. And then also see the optional video for this interdependency of master and slave, just from 0 to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Und so eine Frage für uns, wie spielt sich diese Dynamik zwischen Herr und Knecht, Master und Slave im Venus und Pelz ab? Diese Grafik kann vielleicht helfen, Gedanken zu organisieren. So here's a graphic, and you can pause to look at this as long as you want. Here we have mastery, here we have slavery, here we have domination and captivity. And so I think it's really good to keep these two like separated when we're thinking about the type of relationship that's depicted in the text, and also just in general, right? You don't want to dominate people. Even though it gives you your independence, you just have a bunch of captive, you have a captive audience. Mastery is dependent on slavery, and not slavery in the historical sense. This is an abstract sense of interrelationship. Sometimes that's difficult to remember because of the wording. And here we have lordship. So this is the lordship positions. The bondage or Knechtschaft positions are down here. Activity or reactivity characterize these two, and passivity or impassivity characterize these. And so die Dialektik ist eine dynamische Möglichkeit der Entwicklung, so a dynamic potential of development. And I think this character, this cartoon really shows this. Found this online. Refugee crisis is a Hegelian dialectic conveyor belt. And so a conveyor belt, because it's continually bringing these individuals into conflict where they have to struggle to define themselves vis-a-vis each other. Anyway, I hope that helps. Let's try to apply this to our text. It's not an accident that the story opens with the friend of Severin waking up from a dream. Before he went to sleep, he was reading Hegel. So he wakes up from a dream after reading Hegel, and then this whole story is kind of introduced. And so Sacher-Masoch is trying to tell us something about Hegel's dialectic. Don't know if it's affirming it or putting in it or questioning it. Well, I have an idea, but I want you guys to think about that. So, Dankeschön. Please post Fragen in dem Diskussionsforum.